All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. and what Ring Magazine is reporting that he may be moving up to 154 pounds sooner than later. Let's talk about that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about the welterweight division, or more specifically, a move that may be taking place in the welterweight division. But before I get into that, please make sure, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, that you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. Your support would be greatly appreciated. Also, hit that like button and watch the video all the way to the end. Now, let's get into it. Ring Magazine yesterday released some information that, by the way, I released a day before, so good to know it, which is that Jaron Boots Ennis would be as accepted an IBF final eliminator to become the mandatory for Errol Spence's IBF title. But in the same article where they talked about that, they mentioned that Errol Spence Jr., the fight between between Jaron Ennis and Errol Spence is not expected to be made because Errol Spence Jr., according to their information, will be moving to 154 pounds and not be available for the mandatory for Jaron Ennis. And eventually they may actually have Jaron Ennis fight for the vacant belt, the vacant IBF belt. So what does that mean? That means that, first of all, I think that is something that is, I do not like, but I do think if you listening to everything that's going on in boxing and seeing what's going on in the 160-pound division, the 154-pound division, and the things that have been said about Errol Spence Jr. and the vis-a-vis the WBO belt that's held by Terence Crawford, I think that move is it's likely that they are correct in that regard. And let me tell you what I mean by that. As of right now, the WBC champion at 168 pounds is Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo is supposedly in negotiations with Canelo Alvarez to get a Canelo Alvarez fight on Cinco de Mayo. So if Jermall Charlo moves up to 168 pounds for either that fight or a David Benavidez fight or a Caleb Plant fight, that is going to free up a championship belt at 160 pounds. At 154 pounds, I do believe in April, Jermall Charlo is going to be fighting Brian Castano for the 154-pound undisputed titles. Now, my suspicion and belief is that Jermall Charlo is going to win the fight between himself and Castano. However, there is most definitely a chance that Castano wins that fight. But either way it goes, if Jermall Charlo becomes undisputed, it is likely that he would move up in weight versus holding on to all of those belts and all of the sanctioning fees associated with that belt for more than one or two fights. But since his brother moved up to 168 pounds and he is the WBC champion at 154 pounds, he would be open to get a shot. Actually, he would be open to get a shot for any of those belts. He could go fight for he could fight Demetrius Andrade for the WBO belt. If Demetrius Andrade vacates, which they're saying he's doing, that he may be doing to move up to 168, or he could fight for the WBC belt and get an undisputed shot and fight for that WBC belt, which would then free up the undisputed titles or the rest of the titles for Errol Spence Jr. to move up in weight and then begin to fight for undisputed at 154 pounds, because that really is where all of the belts at this point in time will be in the PBC's hands, and would be a much easier route for him to get undisputed than what's going on with Terence Crawford. Now, also in the eventuality that Brian Castano wins and beats Jermall Charlo, that is a easy fight for Errol Spence Jr. to step up and make with Brian Castano for an undisputed title. And that's a fight that I'm telling you, at 154 pounds, I would heavily favor Errol Spence Jr. to win over Brian Castano because of the way that those guys, because of the style of the fight of Brian Castano and Errol Spence Jr. Brian Castano, it provided Errol Spence Jr. moves up and he's strong, I do believe is tailor-made for Errol Spence Jr. Now, I know that Errol Spence Jr. had lost to Brian Castano in the amateurs, but look, that's the amateurs. That is not the professionals, and Errol Spence Jr. is not the same fighter in the amateurs that he is now in the professionals. But regardless, you know, what it means for the 147-pound division, and as far as the 140-pound division, you know, with all of the conversation, especially what Tim Smith said about, you know, the marketability of Terence Crawford and his inability to sell pay-per-views and the cost and the expense associated with that, and saying that he wouldn't even want to insult Terence Crawford by making him an offer, you know, that just kind of tells you what the mindset of the PBC is relative to paying for a fight with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. But also, you know, just what I explained to you, it really does seem like that is, you know, having Errol go to 154, having Jermell go to 160, and having Jermall go to 168. And then you have 147. You have another kid that is fighting on Showtime and is pretty much, you know, been fighting on all of the PBC cards in Jaron Ennis, you know, who's been fighting on PBC cards. Jaron Ennis seems like he would move right in and be able to beat any of those guys for the rest of those belts that are still, in my understanding, still going to be within the control, or could very well still be within the control, you know, of the PBC, especially with the relationship, you know, that Al Heyman has with Mauricio Sulaiman and the WBC Mauricio Sulaiman and the WBC. That's what I would see, you know, kind of playing out. Also, you're also going to have Keith Thurman down there with the PBC, who's going to be looking to get, you know, championship fights. You got, you know, Staniosis, who is a PBC fighter, Eastern European guy that is managed by, who's managed by Shelly Finkel. He is in that mix. So, you know, when they're saying that Errol might move up, it just, honestly, I do believe that if I was looking at how the PBC, and not just the PBC, but how different management and promotional companies work and how they operate, they tend to do these things. Top Rank is the same way. You know, they move their fighters up weight classes when a fighter, and they're not going to have a fighter in one weight class above them necessarily fighting one and the other if they can get them to move up, right? So you have Terence Crawford moving up into 147 pounds, and then they sign somebody at, you know, sign Josh Taylor at 140 pounds. You have Teofimo Lopez at 135, Shakur Stevenson at 130. They want to keep him at 130 and not necessarily have him fight Teofimo Lopez, so they can control, you know, all of those different weight classes. And it seems like that may be the play that they're trying to put forward in the PBC. And, you know, it is what it is, man. Some people are going to say that's garbage. You know, I don't like that. That's, you know, Errol's ducking Terence, or the PBC is protecting their fighters, and this, that, and the other thing. And then that very well may be true, that Top Rank does the same thing. Top Rank likes to keep fighters in-house, and they're not in the business of losing money or losing their best fighters, you know, in situations if they can avoid it, right? And, you know, matchmaking themselves into oblivion is not going to happen, whether we like it or whether we don't like it. And so when I'm not saying that this is something I like, that Errol Spence Jr. would move up before the Terence Crawford fight. I'm just saying that it is something that when Ring Magazine says it, I think that they're probably not too far off. But anyway, that is my take on the matter. You make sure that you leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.